Hey everyone, what's up? This is Simon from DevTactic. In this tutorial I will show you how you can dynamically create components. So this is a bit more advanced, some more Angular stuff, but we will get through it. So first of all, I've created a blank new Ionic app, and now we need a few things. So first of all, I will create a provider because let's imagine we get some data from an API and we want to translate that data to steps. So perhaps users can configure different steps of a process in some web application or whatever, and then your app receives those steps and we need to transform those steps into the right components. So we got the provider and then we need three components. So let's say step 1, step 2, and of course step 3. All right, and we need to load them in a different way. So Ionic creates this components module file, but we can delete it as we don't need it. Also, we need two more files which will be an interface and a class. So one is process.ts and another one process item.ts. I will also go ahead and run Ionic Lab already, and then we can go to the app module, and as I said, we need to import them differently. So we need to add them to the declarations and entry components of our app as well. Here's also the preview. So go ahead, step 1 component, step 2 component, and step 3 component. Actually, my imports, are they right or wrong? Let's see. More or less, I think this should work. And also, they need to go to the entry components as well. So it's like we're not using lazy loading here. And save it. And hopefully we don't get any errors by now. Great. All right, let's start with the interface for a process component. And therefore we can simply say export interface process component, and we just defined it, so we get some TypeScript completion for our stuff. Also, all of our components need some stuff. So we've defined that each component will have a data object, so we can create the data as an input. So normally you would set this input in your HTML, but we will do it through our code. And also make sure that this one implements process component. Yes, and you can see now we get already the TypeScript error because the property data is missing. So if you type it or spell it correctly, this works. And now go to the two other steps as well. Implements process component. Come on, no completion, of course. Import process component. And then, sorry, we got the input with data as well in here. And then no more complaining, only the inputs. And finally, for the last one, of course, as well, remove all of it, input the import, and implements process component. So this one is more or less optional. Just now we can get some TypeScript reporting. And then for the HTML view, we will simply craft this into Ion slides. So each process step will be one Ion slide, and therefore go to the other ones as well. So make sure all the 3 HTML files of the components are the same. And if you want to, of course, you could say something like the background, I don't know, just so we see a little difference there between our 3 steps. Beautiful colors, right? Okay, so that's enough for the setup. We now got 3 different components we could use, and now we continue with our process provider, which will in general, or if you think about it, receive some form of JSON data from the API, which is the order of some steps. So I've created a little dummy JSON here, response. So this response might contain an array of items with the steps in some order, perhaps even some sub-steps. So one step could have as many children steps, and again, just like they want. And we now need to transform this response into a view crafted of the different step components. And first of all, also let's define another class inside the process item file. So this will be a class, and again, this is more or less optional, just we get some more typing information. So a process item will consist of a component, which is our component then later, type any, and as well a little description, public description, which is a string, and then whatever. Component of type any, this should be actually Angular core, and then it works. So by making the items inside the constructor, the class has these items, so we can access them later. Now let's go to the provider once again. First of all, one outside function will be called getProcessSteps, and this one will return an array of process items, hopefully. So this is the one we will call from outside, and then we got 2 more functions inside the provider, get page order from some steps. So this will resolve a JSON response or whatever you got into the according process item steps. And also we need one to resolve component's name for a given step. And this function will actually translate a string or ID or whatever to our component. So we need some form of mapping to those components. We can't simply create something based on just the plain name. So if the step is 1, we return step 1 component. And the same for the other ones as well. So 2 more else ifs. If the step is 2, we return the step 2 component. And here we return the step 3 component. Imports look fine. So this means this function will resolve it. Now, you might think this is not so flexible, but actually, if you have dedicated teams, you just need to add some information to this provider. Different teams can work on different components. The backend team can work on its stuff. And you simply need to add the mapping in one place, and that's all to resolve the information. Okay, back to the original function. This is the one called from outside, and this will then call our get page order with this dummy JSON.items. So I crafted it so you can make this actually right to your needs. This would of course be your JSON response and your mapping here. This function will also return an array of process items. So let's start with the result, which would be of the type process item again, and in the beginning empty array, and finally we return the result. So now we've already fixed all the TypeScript errors. Now we need to process the information we got from the API into an array of process items. So we iterate let item of steps, simple iteration through all the steps. And then if the item has another array of sub items, we need some special stuff. And if the item is just one process step, we say let new component this resolve components name for item.step. So item.step 1, 2, 3, whatever, and the component would then be 1, 2, or 3 component. And then we can create a new item as we've created the interface of a process item. And a process item consists of a component, so of a component, and then of the item description, perhaps some text, which would be inside that. And then simply say result push our new item. So in the end, we get a result array of process items. Now, if we got some child items, I wanted to make this a bit more complex because this can happen, of course. In that case, we simply say our result is the current result, and we concat it with a new array. And this would be, again, our own function. So a bit tricky here. We're calling our own function. And whenever there's a new array, it will be added here. So this is how we could handle the array of children. Okay, now this function will return us a nice little array. So let's go to our home page and add an ion view did load. And first of all, let's say let steps equals this dot. Of course, we need to import it. Private process provider. Process provider, where is it? Is this right? I don't know. Process provider dot only one function. We've made the other one private, so only this one is public. And in your case, this would make perhaps the request, return the mapping. And then if we log out the steps now, we could already see, hopefully, that I've imported something wrong somewhere. Let's see. Directives. Who is importing this stuff? Process item, process, app module. Who the fuck is doing this? Come on. What the fuck? Just import it from Angular core, come on. I guess it's wrong everywhere, thanks. So my automatic import is sometimes a bit wrong. I don't know exactly why. So make sure you got all of this right. And then we see we got 5 process items. All of them contain a component and a description. So now we just need to transform that information into our view. So inside the view, let's say color primary, and here we say dynamic templates. And inside our Ion content, we now add Ion slides. And as you remember, each component is one slide. So we just need a hosting element, which we will call process container. And all the slides will be rendered in this process container. So we can access it using the view child. And this is again wrong. Just import from Angular core, come on. By the name process container. And we also want to read it view container reference. So one or more views can be attached to this container, and we need to attach our components to this container. So now we got the steps, and now the last missing piece of the tutorial, we iterate the step of steps. And for each of the steps, we need one factory. And this is the what's it again? Come on, the resolver. It was in the title. Resolver of ComponentFactoryResolver. Okay, I hope this import works. Doesn't look that good. Actually, this should be from core as well, and this should work. And now we can use this resolver by creating a new factory. This resolver resolve component factory and passing in our own component. And this gives us a new, if we type it right. And also we see that we got the type completion here, which is pretty good if we're working with some more complex stuff like this. Okay, we got the factory. Now we create a component reference to the new component and we directly create it on our container. This will add the component to our container. If we say this.container create component with the factory, we just have to pass in the factory and all of the rest will be handled by Angular. And the final step, this would already be enough to set the components, but we also want to be able to set the input. So we know those are of the type process component. So we can say process component component ref. So we cast it and use the instance, and then we get the code completion right here for our process component again, and can use the description of one single step. Yeah, I thought so. Just make sure to import the view container ref should be right from Angular core. And there we are. So our JSON looked like this. First step, second step, and the third step containing the third and the first, and then another second. So let's see, we got the first step, we got the second step, then we got the third step, and now the first should come again, and the second. So everything works as expected. Let's take a look again what we've done. So this one resolved imaginary JSON response to our components. We only iterated, create a factory. Using the factory, we attach the component to our viewChild container, and then using the cast on our new object, we can also set the input of our steps, which is available by using the interface. And as you can see, all of those are added to our view, which simply contains this hosting element process container. The homepage has no idea about the components and dynamically creates the component using this pattern. Of course, it's not 100% dynamic, so we need this mapping somewhere. We need to know which component Angular needs to create, but we only need this in one place. We can update it here, and then we could handle a JSON response or whatever you got, which was dynamically perhaps created by a user to create the components then later on in whatever file you want on the fly. So this was a bit more into detail and more Angular stuff than the other tutorials. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. It's not perhaps not super clear immediately. And of course, if you want more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the latest stuff. And I'll see you inside the next video. Have a great day and take care.